All right, guys, we are live here at the Attention Era Media Studios overlooking the beautiful downtown Milwaukee. You're watching hour number 21 of our 24-hour broadcast today, celebrating community managers everywhere, talking about all kinds of stuff around community management, and celebrating CMAD with people all around the world. This is CMAD's 6th year that we're celebrating together as a tribe, as a community of community managers, and 3rd year that we're pulling together panels for everybody to enjoy all day. We're the gang from My Community Manager. My name is Baru, Director of Awesome with BTC Revolutions, and then at My Community Manager here, the co-producer here with Sherry.
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry Rody. I lead community and user experience at Rebellion Media, as well as co-produce CMGR Hangout here at Brew.
Hey guys, I'm Dom Garrett. I'm My Community Manager's Dancing Monkey, comedic relief. I do freelance social media, and I hang out with these guys every single Friday.
All right. So let's just jump into things. Our topic today is determining the business value of community managers at startups. And Carrie, why don't you take it away?
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely a mouthful of a title. But I'm really excited to bring together not only community managers but founders on this panel and some really great community engagement officers. And I'll introduce myself last, but let's just go around and kind of get to know everybody on the panel first, and then we'll go through the questions that we have. So we'll start with you, Thomas.
Oh, okay. So my name is Thomas Canal, and I'm the founder of PrimeLoop.com, and I've been building online community for over 17 years now, including some time at Zappos and User Voice and Seismic and LaunchRock. So I think I've been around a little too long.
Not possible. Okay, Siobhan.
Sorry, I lost my mute button. My name is Siobhan Hitchmo. I tweet at Sio Tweets, and I'm from a company called Archon Systems. We make inventory management software, and we're a startup.
All right, Maria and Sahana.
Hi. Oh, hi. My name is Maria, also known as The Maria on Twitter and elsewhere. I'm head of community for Sidecar, which is a ride-sharing marketplace where people can give and get rides with this thing. I've been in community for a number of years. Love the game. Love the bringing companies together with their customers. And I'm excited to chat with you guys.
Hi guys, I'm Sahana, and I run marketing engagement programs, so that encompasses social marketing and content marketing and email marketing for Clout, which is now a part of the Lithium family. I historically started at Clout as a community manager and kind of ran all things related to social and community there, and since then my role has evolved quite a bit, so I'm excited to kind of share an interesting perspective on what happens when you're scaling community and marketing and all these different things at an early stage startup.
Awesome. And Rebecca?
Hi, my name is Rebecca Braulio, and I am working on the community for the Project Management Institute over at projectmanagement.com. My last community job was with a startup called Pet360. Where I built theirs from the ground up, and they were recently acquired by PetSmart. So looking forward to chatting with everyone today.
Yay! And David was able to join us, so we'll have David go next.
Hello, sorry I'm late. I'm David Spinks. I'm the founder of CMX, and we are building a platform to support and empower the community professionals in the world. So all of the people here and everybody listening to this, our job is to make your life better, to make your job easier, and to help you be better at it. So that's me.
Andy has glorious hair.
Lovely. And last but certainly not least, Andrew.
Hello, I'm Andrew J. Coate, Senior Community and Content Manager at Kapost. We're a marketing software company out here in beautiful Boulder, Colorado. I think I saw some beers out there in Milwaukee. I will be joining you, so cheers from across the country here.
Awesome.
That's a good call. I better. Allison, can you give me a beer?
I am still drinking tea. I'm in Seattle, and I'm Carrie, and I have a. You can see my sloth mug. So I'm Carrie Jones, and I started my community career at Chegg, which actually IPO'd in November 2013. And then I went on to work on community outreach at Scribd, and since then, and also during that time, I've advised several communities in the education space and otherwise, including Coursera and Socratic.org. And now I have the great fortune to work with David Spinks on CMX Media. So I'm building out content strategy for community managers. We host CMX Summit, we consult with startups, and we're really building the community manager community, which, you know, makes sense and is very meta. So we're obviously very interested in getting startups up to speed on what community can do for their business and how community managers can play a strong role in startups and what startups are building with their customers. So let's get to it. Starting with the first question, what do each of you do as a community manager or a community professional at the startup that you work at, or if you're a founder or other professional, what do your community team members do?
I'll get us kicked off here, if that's all right. So my role is a little bit diverse, and as I feel like community management roles tend to be continually changing, but I would describe it as essentially I'm in charge of the voice of our company to any outward communication to community as you define it. So on social media, within private groups, we're in the midst of building a customer community as well, and so I'm kind of the connecting point between all of those, as well as I guess the voice of the marketing team. I work with customer success and sales and all those kind of things. So kind of if there's communication on behalf of Kapost, I have something to do with it, which is a lot of fun and a lot of words.
I'll jump in next. My name is Maria, and I'm head of community at Sidecar, as I mentioned. So my job is very much like Andrew's, to be the voice of Sidecar. We have a lot of news every single week. You know, there's app updates. Our industry is a very fast-changing one, so there's always something happening. And so to get everyone aligned and on the same page, because we're so distributed, right? We have drivers. If you think about ride-sharing, we have drivers all over, right? And we don't have people like on the ground everywhere that we are. So our community is really our central nervous system. It is how we communicate anything and everything as a company to our drivers. So that's the sort of the outbound. The inbound, we get a lot of questions, because before we used to communicate everything over email, but you can't, the email doesn't talk back to you, right? So where does the driver go when he or she has questions? They create a support ticket. That's bad, right? That's really, because it traps the answer like between two people, and it doesn't benefit anyone else, and it overwhelms the support team. So it's a place where we can answer questions, where people can, you know, obviously every answer adds to the awesome database of knowledge that's there, that's just growing by the day. So people don't even have to ask and answer questions. They can just search and self-service. So there's that part of it. And then my favorite part is drivers actually connecting to each other, because there's so much local knowledge that exists. You got to know. You got to know where to drive, when to drive, how to price yourself, what the hot points are. And so some of our community champions actually put out weekly newsletters to let other drivers know what's up in their home city. And it's also, finally, it's a service business, right? So how do we empower people to carry the Sidecar brand through every single interaction that they have in their car? Because Sidecar is not what we say it is, it's what happens on that ride between the driver and the rider. How do we make sure that experience is always awesome? So drivers get to share tips on how to be successful. how to, really be that, service business, small business, tiny business of one, and for us to ensure that, people are happy, people are heard, get product feedback, so we get to hear, early warning system of like anything that happens with the app, we're the first to know, and we can let the engineers and the QA know right away and fix the problem within hours. So it's our little secret advantage.
Wow. So I really like. So I'm Sahana. Again, I work on marketing for Cloud and Lithium. I really like how Maria kind of categorized her role in terms of like outbound and inbound. It's a really good way to think about it, actually. I would say, I've always had like a healthy balance of both. Earlier on, when I started at Cloud, I would say it was more equal. Now my role is much more inbound marketing focused than it is outbound marketing focused. Historically, I've done everything from I ran our brand ambassador programs. I did a lot of interesting experimentation with different types of launching early ideas to test groups to like test out, is this like a product, is there a product market fit, is this something that actually helps people in their daily social media lives, and then kind of evolved more into like content marketing, more into interesting like marketing partnerships almost, and then more into like our channel engagement eventually, which is social, email, and other channels.
Awesome. And so I'm hearing that there's like support, communication, a little bit of content. There's a little bit of everything when you're in the startup environment. Is that also true for what you do, Rebecca?
Yeah. I mean, the company I'm currently with was an acquisition, so they are not the startup. But at Pet360, it literally was the ground up. When I came on board, they had just picked the platform, which was Lithium. And then from then on, it was on me to determine a roadmap for programming. They made a specific decision not to have their community be customer support. The community on pet360.com is primarily to allow pet owners to come together to help one another out and to get as much information they can about how to have a great relationship with their pets. So as community manager, it was my job to make sure that the traffic was coming into the community, that to track all of the metrics, to support the community and find out what was working and what wasn't working, but also to determine all of the programming and to find my super users to create an advocacy program.
Awesome. Yeah. Is that also true for you, Siobhan, that you kind of do everything, but you also do the metrics and this sort of like next level, high level strategy?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, at least recently. So when I started, similar to Rebecca was saying, when I started, our developers were doing support and community themselves. I think I was the 4th employee at our company, so that's certainly changed over the time that I've been here. There are 3 of us doing community now, so I guess the day-to-day has changed, but overall, our community is mostly driven towards sort of improving the product as a whole and making sure that we can disseminate that educational information, and also learn ourselves, because our community is made up of businesses, of small business owners and that sort of thing, and our product is specifically geared towards one thing, or we might think that it's used in a certain way, but we certainly aren't going to know how each and every single one of our community members are using it unless we allow them to tell us that. And learn from those sort of real experiences, because I can, think I know, and as soon as I think I know, someone will tell me otherwise. So managing those relationships and making sure that we have a good way to sort of turn that information around and make the best of it, like Maria was saying, and improve, the product that we're putting out there.
Yeah, definitely. I think product feedback is a huge part of that early stage startup community role. And Thomas and David, I'm really curious, like you as founders, like what role do you think the founder plays in the community development, maybe even before the first community hire, or if there ever is a need for one?
Yeah, so as a CEO who identifies as a community professional, I see my role, is first and foremost placing a lot of priority on the community and echoing that sentiment and value back to the team. Kind of everything that comes up, reframing things in the perspective of our customers and what is going to help them grow and be more connected and be more successful. And then the second piece of it is internally, employees and members of the team. We also have our own community. That's maybe more culture is the way we tend to talk about those things. But I do, and just as, if not more intentional about the same types of things I've always done for building customer communities internally within our own company. And again, hopefully just the way we approach things and think about things then is translated into a way that our employees interact with our customers. And then for Peter, who really owns community outside of the company, a lot of stuff that he's doing is really thinking first and foremost about community, and then our piece of that really comes second. And so we definitely do all the things that everyone is talking about with the support and the marketing and reaching out and messaging. But we try to take the approach of, whenever possible, how do we connect customers directly to supporting and encouraging and telling their stories and training one another. And we just kind of become the mirror for those things, or the curator of this gallery of great success that other customers are having. And so hopefully that kind of trickles down into the rest of the business.
I guess to add to that, I guess one part of the question was, what's the founder's role in actually building the community, or the CEO's role in building the community? And especially in the early days, I think the founder is the community professional on the team. I mean, they're actually everything on the team, but I think in those really early days, community is essential, right? It has to be a priority, and the best person to start building that community are the people who are building the company, who saw the problem that they're trying to fix, who know the people that they're trying to serve, and that they start talking to those people really early on, and they start building that community themselves. Eventually, like every other role that an early founder takes on, they'll need to plug somebody in to manage the day-to-day of that. But there's no one better in the very early days than the founder to actually do it, to execute on that in the early days. And then as the company grows, I think they still have the role of determining how the company on a cultural level looks at community. So everything as far as culture usually trickles down from the founders and from the CEO. They set the priorities, the morals, what really drives the company. And it's up to the founder whether or not they want to build a company that's community driven, that's a part of their core philosophy and how they build their business and how they want their culture to work, that will infiltrate everything from how they interact with their customers to how employees interact with each other to their events and everything they do. And that will greatly determine how those conversations around the value of community and investment in community and the returns you get on community, that will determine how those conversations go very strongly based on how the founder sets that expectation early on and as the company is growing as a culture. And that's not necessarily the right approach for everyone to have a completely community-centric company, but they have to be aware of that choice and know that they're either creating a community-driven company or they're treating it like another tactic, basically.
Awesome. So I'm sure that all of us have been in the place of, just starting out in a new role, as a community manager or as a community professional in a startup. What would you do with the first 3 months at a startup? Where do you begin? I mean, it's such a it's such a mess in a beautiful way. Like, where do you begin to do your work as a community manager at a startup?
I can take us off. I think like the three most important things that a community manager can do is, one, get to know their team and get to know the people that they're working with and understand like their challenges and successes. Two, probably arguably the most important thing you can do is get to know the product and the company and the services on a very, very deep level, because by getting to know those things, you can really start to understand what your customers or your users are experiencing on a day-to-day level, and kind of start to be more forward-thinking. And three, I think getting to know like processes or kind of understanding how things are currently being done, or the legacy way of doing things. And I would actually challenge whoever comes on to kind of actually challenge those legacy processes, and like even question if there's a need to do things in the way that they're being done, and kind of think more creatively. If there is a better way to do something, that's like the best time to start thinking about it, when you've gone to understand the people and the product on a much deeper level.
I completely agree with that. To add to that, I'd also like to issue a word of caution. So I don't think that, and I've actually blogged about this on the CMX website, I think we have this tendency to go, and especially if you're first, like, oh, I'm going to build this awesome community, and then you just go and you just run. You're like, I'm going to have all this technology, and I'm going to launch it, and it's going to be so awesome. I would actually caution you to understand the community a little bit and see if you can test certain theories that you have. We actually started with Facebook groups, and we were on Facebook groups for a while. So before we actually launched our online community, we knew exactly what our community members wanted from each other, from us, what they talked about, and so that greatly informed how we launched our community. So I'd say focus on that. Focus, instead of like building features, focus on the behaviors that you want to promote, because again, the only way that you'll scale is you're starting in a startup and it's small, but it's going to grow, right? Otherwise, you sort of have bigger problems than that. With your eye on that, you need to create conditions for people to help each other, right? Because that's the only way you're going to scale. You're not going to hire like 20 community managers. Most of us don't have that kind of budget. How do you activate the right people within the community to really help drive the community? So you build a community with your community, and by doing that, you actually build community. So that was the very first thing that I did, is I got to know our community. I got to know the behaviors that existed, sort of where centers of gravity already were, and I partnered with our most amazing advocates, right? And so I would actually encourage you to start thinking about your advocacy program or champion program or whatever you want to call it at the very start, and it doesn't have to be all online. You actually build the community with them. So before we ever launched anything, we worked with our partners to figure out what that's going to be and what kind of behaviors we want to promote. They were like our founding partners, and so that was very, very special. They're still with us, most of them, to this day. And then, of course, get to know your team, get to know your product, all those good things. Good luck.
Anyone want to add to that?
I'll jump in.
I just real quick.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom. I was just going to say, I think one of the best things that I ever did was just pick up the phone, and it kind of builds upon what you were just saying about getting to know and thinking about your advocates. Picking up the phone and talking to actual customers or people who really support your product or don't support your product. Listening in on a customer service call can be really educational, and just having a conversation. You learn a lot from it.
Yeah, I'd like to listen, learn, and love, or fall in love. So or maybe it's not as obvious to a lot of people, but definitely I like to start with listening a whole lot. like to the point where it almost gets uncomfortable. Like you want to jump in, but you just tie yourself down a little bit longer and keep on listening. And part of that is asking questions because you want to learn something. But what I'm trying to learn is, who are these people? What do they believe? Who do they trust? Where do they hang out? What are they looking for? What are our shared goals and purposes? What are the things that are going to make our lives better, our jobs better? Not just about the product itself. Like, I'm not listening for tricks to market to them, but I'm listening to really learn who they are, what they need in general in life, because maybe we're going to be able to solve deeper problems for them, almost like in a Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing. And then the last part is fall in love, and in the messy way, not in the cheesy, stupid, I love the metrics you're giving me kind of way. But the kind of love that looks at people who are falling down, or situations that aren't very pretty, or when someone can tell me the truth and it hurts, but I am willing to accept that because I know that there's something special here. Because then now when I start working my way back out of that, I have the ability and capacity to help people be successful because I'm driven by my own compassion for them, and recognize opportunities where there is conflict, but we have the ability to work through it. There are places like you can tell me that like your product sucks, and you are comfortable telling me more than you ever would because I have the capacity to actually learn from that. And again, it all goes back to demonstrating those behaviors, so that the community itself begins to understand that, like, oh, this is kind of how we are. This is a brand that listens. This is a brand that's trying to learn from us. This is a brand that actually loves us and wants to see us be successful. So I work in that way and then work back out with the community.
I just want to add as well, so like Rebecca and Thomas, you both just touched on listening to people, doing calls, getting to know them, and what that also does, like, it helps you learn more about those people, but what it also does is start building relationships with those individual people. And when you're asked to come in and be a community manager for a company that's existed for a long time or brand new, basically you're being asked to become a leader. Every single community professional is a leader for their community, and they have to develop the respect of their community, they have to develop a reputation, and they have to be somebody that people are willing to get behind and follow. And you don't do that by going in and just starting to change it up. You do it by talking to people, listening to them, understanding their problems, and starting to figure out how you can help solve those problems and make those people feel important and make them feel good about themselves. And so talking to people is like the only thing you should be doing at first, because one, it helps you learn, also two, it helps you start planting those seeds to become the leader that you'll need to be able to do your job well down the line.
Yeah, I'm going to just repeat that sort of same sentiment that I talk with a lot of startups who will say, they want to hire a community strategist, but who will come in and create a community roadmap for them right off the bat. Well, you can't do that. Like, I can't walk in, look at your product, and look at some data points and tell you, like, oh, here's where you should start to gamify. Like, here's some badges you should plug in to your forum software. No, that doesn't work. It will never, ever work. And so you need to set up like 30, 40 phone calls and coffee meetings and talk to people. And this is actually something that I did at my last full-time role. Was I sat down and had 40 different Skype conversations in my first 2 months as a community manager, and everyone described themselves. I asked them to describe their habits in almost the exact same language, which was fascinating. And you would never know that, from a survey. It just kind of the way they described themselves as users was exactly the same. And so from there we were able to create a shared mission. Still weren't able to create a community roadmap. You create that over time. You don't do that right off the bat. But yeah, so those first 3 months I would say are just really about discovery and figuring out what your immediate goal is. Is it about fixing your product? Is it about fixing your support channels? Is it about galvanizing people and creating ambassadors? So more like marketing, et cetera, et cetera. So, so moving on to the third question, do you think that every startup needs a community manager? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
So I don't think they do. I think most don't deserve one. Maybe they could earn one later. But and this kind of goes back to something David was saying earlier. Founders really should, if we're talking about startups, founders should really be doing this as absolutely long as possible. And ideally hiring someone from the community itself to come in and continue to advocate and cultivate that community. If we're talking about larger businesses, then when there is even a community to exist, please put some institutional intentions through hiring, and resources and budget and a voice at the table in the way too many meetings that you're having anyway, to make those things real and to be a part of that. But community is earned, not deserved, and so I don't think that it's a great idea to just look around and go like, oh, we should have a community manager, let's fill that role.
So I'll say I'll take the total opposite position. I think that and we were talking about this on Facebook, I think that in the ideal situation, your founder is those things, absolutely, and should be, and that's the way it should be. But I don't think that that's necessarily the case all the time, at least in my experience. And I think that, especially right now, community is such a hot word. Lots of people want communities, or lots of companies that are starting out decide that they want to have a community. And just the downfall I see is to not having a community manager on board from the beginning is that, it is a profession. Like, there are those of us who this is what we do, and we're experts in the field. And we're experts in the field for a reason, because we've taken the time to become educated and have the experience to do it. So a good leader or founder who doesn't have that background would surround him or herself with the people who do, that being a community manager professional. How many times are there situations where a company starts up and they want to have a community aspect, or they want their product to be community-ish, and lots of decisions are made early on that really impact a community manager's ability to do their job. Even whether it's the platform they choose or a strategy they pick, that really is not best practices, and they wouldn't necessarily know that because they don't have the depth of knowledge that a community manager would have. So I guess that's why I feel that, understandably, startups usually don't have the funds to be able to have a community manager from the get-go. I think just like how it's the ideal situation to have a founder who has a good strong background in community, the ideal startup would have the funds to support having a community manager. I just think that a lot of people like to talk community and say this is what they want, but they don't necessarily have the background to know what's the right way to go about it.
Anyone want to add to that?
Sure. I'll go back over to the other side. Thomas's view. Oh, I just lost everyone. You guys?
No, I see you.
Okay. So I'm actually with Thomas. I don't think that every product or every company actually gets to have a community. A lot of companies are actually not ready, because community, I'm going to steal from David, it's a leadership discipline, right? It's very, very much about your DNA as a company, not really the technology that you put out there to connect to your members. And so if you're not ready to actually systematically deal with the issues that community is going to bring forward, you absolutely should not even try. because it will bring forward, like, everything that's a deficiency in your business will come out to play, which is good, right? Because we're in this to change, we're in this to grow. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? If you're not changing. So it's a great way to really understand what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, and to really transform yourself. But you have to be brave to be able to face it and really listen and really understand and internalize what it is the community is telling you. Because if you're not going to be good at community. Your community manager is going to be like just really burnt out, and you're probably not going to do terribly well as a business. So usually that's sort of symptomatic of a larger issue. But if you're willing to listen and willing to change and actually not just message back, hey, we'll look into this, but really attack problems head on, you'll do extremely well. But it's DNA, and it's in the founder's blood, and it has to be the right company.
I think it's interesting. There's like a couple different points being made, and on one end it's whether or not companies should invest in community at all, and on the other end it's whether or not they need a community manager or professional or someone's help like that. Whether or not companies should invest in community at all, I actually do believe that every company has an opportunity to invest in community in an interesting way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they should do it, because there are probably other things they could be investing in. And whether or not community is right for their company versus being focused on other things and investing elsewhere, that may differ from company to company. If you are going to invest in community, I think you can always use the help of somebody who's been doing this for a long time and who's seen what's really worked and what hasn't worked, can point to the red flags that you might run into, can give you kind of the strategy and the framework. Sure, there has to be the authentic level of caring and wanting to be a leader and actually giving a shit about the community. But once you have that, if you want to be good at it and you want to improve it, you can always use the help of somebody who's been through that many times before. Yep.
Anything else before we move on to question 4?
I just want to add a comment here. I'm not sure if I'm quite ready to take a side on this topic, but one thing that I'll say that I've noticed is, like, many early stage startups get really pumped and they think that they are ready for a community manager and ready for community, but the issue lies in that they don't quite know really what the role means, right? So there's really big gap in what community. It really depends on how you define community and what those roles and responsibilities are. And I think we're getting closer as an industry to really defining not just community, but then the different levels within community, and then the different, how do you get granular? Where does content sit? Where does marketing sit? And then where does social sit? How do you distinguish between all of these things? Because I just think it's so easy for there to be so many gray areas. So, I mean, on one hand, if you define community as something that I know a lot of community professionals are against, which is, social, even for social, I would advise, I kind of agree with Maria here, which is you really have to be ready if you want to invest in it. It has to be done the right way. So there's a time and place and phase for it, and I think there needs to be some education done with startup founders on that topic.
Yeah. So getting into the real meat of the topic, once you have a community manager at your startup and you've decided to make this leap and take this risk, how can you tell if your community manager is successful?
I'll jump in if that's okay. I think it depends pretty heavily on what your goals as a company are. And that goes back to what Maria was saying about it being in the DNA of the company. When I joined our company, as I say, the developers were doing support. That was because there were 3 people and they were also the founders. So that worked well for us and has scaled pretty well because it's so intrinsic to sort of how we develop our product. I mean, we're lucky in that I can point to specific value because we are a software company, right? I can say, these specific things that came up in the community resulted in these specific changes to the product, and those improvements resulted in whatever, right? But that really has to do with your own metrics and your own goals, because you can't say, well, this is an industry standard. What's an industry standard? It depends on what industry you're in. It depends on how your community is. It depends on what type you have. So I think it depends, which is a terrible answer, but it comes down to what your end results are supposed to be and what you're aiming for. For us, anyway.
So determining what that value, what that business value might actually be concretely in your company before you hire someone, instead of figuring it out.
Yeah, and then trying to follow through instead of kind of bumbling along, being like, well, that works out kind of well, and I kind of like that, and that felt really nice when someone said a nice thing to me, so that's good. Really having a concrete set of goals has worked for us.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback your answer here because I really love that you talked about goals. So, what I was saying earlier is like many startups don't actually quite have a clear idea of what they do want their community manager to achieve. It can really vary between like user support to like user experience feedback to social media to ambassador programs. Those are a lot of different things, and each of those things have very different goals and how I would measure them and how I would consider success for each of those different programs. So I actually think even defining and setting goals, that in itself is a win in the first 2 months. Like that's how I would define like a community manager joining a startup and actually getting everyone on the same page and level setting and be like, okay, this is what my role is, and like here's how I'm gonna, this is what I'm working towards, and here's how I'm gonna measure my success. Getting alignment in itself is a big win in the first 3 months.
To piggyback onto that, I completely agree that it depends on what your goals are. I think a lot of it, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, has to do with where community sits. In my perfect world, community is its own function that has a seat at the executive table that rolls up directly to the CEO. However, we're not in that perfect world yet. So metrics are often influenced by where the community person reports to. If it's more of a marketing community, it's going to report on a very different set of metrics versus when it's sort of under the purview of support. That being said, I think it's all about partnership, and it's all about like a very healthy dialogue with the entire C-suite. If you're in a startup, you probably are still in a position to be able to do that. When I came into Sidecar, I had a meeting with every single executive separately and then together to talk about what does this company need, why are we having a community, and only from that did we come up with goals and KPIs. And for us, like I sit in operations, but our goals are not just operational goals. Like we'll look at things like retention and stuff like that. Like what is important to us as a business from a driver perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll climb up on my soapbox for 1 second. And my soapbox is that community manager is the worst title ever invented because of the word manager, because there's no such thing as managing a community. And it's subtle, but I think it directly impacts most of this, is because in businesses, managers manage people and use tools. And so the way that we tend to understand how successful or unsuccessful or whatever a community manager is who are the people that they are managing, and does that work well, and can they give us reporting on the tools that they're using. And in most parts of the business, that makes sense because metrics are based around the actual tools that we're using themselves. The code line checked in, whether test passed, Salesforce, or the pipelines changing or closing. Community managers are using tools that aren't supposed to be at all what is measured. We shouldn't be measuring anything that has to do with the tools that we use, because community management is primarily a human piece of work. And so the things, we use tools, but those aren't what should be measured. The relationships, the density of relationships between our customer base, how much of the work is done by the community instead of people inside of the business. We need to be measuring human things, and we don't have that just built into the tools that we're using. So it's hard to tell whether they're doing anything good or not. which is why I would love it if we would stop calling these people community managers, because they can't manage communities, and instead call them directors of community relationships or VP of customer and community or something else, so that we can switch our focus away from that, from just measuring what tools they use and who are the people they manage, and instead use a set of ROI that's actually based on the reality of the work which we're doing, which is increasing the density of relationships and increasing the amount of value that people are getting out of the relationships they have with other people.
Hallelujah.
Oh, yeah.
I have a post written about that. I just haven't hit publish yet because I'm scared.
Do it.
Do it. I'll publish it.
Yeah. Behind my back.
I have one quick thing to add, because this conversation around value comes up every single time we talk about community management, and I think one really important distinction that comes up very often but no one ever spots it is, are you trying to validate the community professional's job, or are you trying to validate their work? So are you trying to find stats or track goals or things that prove that you should even be focusing on community, or that person should have a job, that even deserves a role within your company? If you're doing that, take a step back and really think about why you're investing in community in the first place. Is it so that you can directly impact your bottom line, or is it because you believe community will improve your business? So are you focusing on validating their job or their work? Their work means you've already established that you believe in community. You already established that community is important for your company, and now the goals and the metrics and the things that you're tracking to prove the value is the value that their work, that the work that they're doing is working, that they are creating more connections, that you are throwing really successful events, that you are creating stronger relationships. You can look at user-to-user interaction. You can look at how many people respond to each other. You can, if it's a community-centric product, you can look at how much content's being created, how many people are responding to that content. You look at the metrics within the community to make sure that they're doing a good job of building community. But that's not going to validate whether or not you should be investing in community in the first place. That's a different decision that you have to make before that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone want to add to that one before we move on?
Nothing, just to say that I love that.
Okay, so we have about 7 minutes left. So this is a pretty big question, but what are some concrete metrics for success that you can just use as examples really quickly for anybody listening to measure how community is working at a startup?
Well, I can say, coming from one that was probably very heavy on the KPIs being something that you can really trace to justify money being spent, which I loved everything David said. It was so, I wanted to scream hallelujah. You know, when you have a business that maybe is using the community mostly for brand awareness and marketing, the KPIs that we had tracked were just the time spent on site, you know, page views, number of posts, number of members creating, you know, the amount of UGC that you're getting, and traffic in to that specific portion of the site. Those are all nice numbers that, if they're getting bigger and bigger, are great to show off. I don't think it represents at all the kind of work that we do, but for companies that are more into the hard numbers, you know, showing that the community manager is reducing costs to them, whether it's through support or increasing revenue to them because of the number of page views that their ads are sitting on, those are some of the more traditional metrics.
Yeah, Andrew, are you with us?
Yes, I'm finally with you right at the end.
Great.
Perfect timing. I just, you know, had, of course, internet problems the 1 hour that I'm supposed to not, but that's all right. I can jump in on this one, though, so perfect. So I think it's also, as you said, it's a really big question because it does depend on the way the community is set up. I'll speak a little bit personally. Within my company, there's myself and one other community manager, and we have our hands on so many other different things that originate from the kind of communication that we're having within our community. And so I am responsible for things like traffic, for influencer relations, and this other person is responsible for adoption of particular parts of our product within the community. And so there's some outside of just the within community metrics, the how often are people talking to each other and how many comments and things like that. I think it's interesting for us that we have these other goals that are tied to our performance, and the strength of our community and the strength of the interaction, the strength of the education that we're doing to the community kind of helps us reach those goals that are measurable in a more traditional marketing or customer success sense. So if there's something like that, I think that's important that you're able to make that connection. And I guess it's good to give that community manager responsibility, or at the very least just credit that, say, if your customer community is very interactive and talking a lot about product features or different methods of solving problems, and then they're better at using your product, that that has something to do with the community manager's performance and the interactions. So that's how I view it. I also wanted to scream hallelujah to the prior conversation, so I think that's kind of where I come from. That it's hard to have specific numbers sometimes, but I think when you look at the holistic environment of where the community manager's efforts go and what leads to them, that it's a little bit easier to say, yes, this is going well.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add any
concrete
metrics?
I was just going to say that I agree strongly that the best metrics for a business are as unique as the number of businesses that exist. So I would normally do this as like a very long conversation and really digging into a lot of things, but I will call out too that I don't ever hear enough businesses ever talking about, so that hopefully you'll consider whether either of these two are a fit for your business. And the first one is density of relationships within the customer base. And what I mean, and kind of doing the mean or average or whatever math words that I don't know unless they're in front of me on paper, is getting it to the point where the majority of your customers have a lot of connections to a lot of other customers, and not like really strong nodes with lots of people connected to them, but like density within all of those relationships. Because if I met a company that even is doing things wrong and isn't really making me very happy, but a lot of my friends are still using that product, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to keep working on it because the people are there. So if I can increase the density of relationships, I'm going to run with that. And the second one is, what percent of referrals of new business are coming from our customers versus any of our marketing initiatives and money or time that we're spending to acquire new customers? What percent is customers? And if we can increase the percentage of customer referrals and point to that to community activities, then you're winning at a business level that far outpaces anything else that a business is doing in measurement.
Yeah, that was awesome. So just really quickly to wrap up, I think David already kind of addressed this in his mic drop moment earlier, but does community need to drive revenue to be considered valuable to a startup? No, everyone's just shaking their head silently.
I mean, I think that question needs to be pointed back on the business. Are your customers valuable enough to you to invest in them? If not, like, shut up and go home. If they are, then do the work.
I think if you're asking that question, then you shouldn't be having a community. If you're having to say that, and again, this is kind of why I go back to, founders who don't necessarily have a good, strong background on it. If you're constantly looking to justify every marketing dollar spent or every dollar of your budget spent to be, doubled by your community manager, you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Can I also just add to this? Like, I think like I love this question because I think this question gets at the heart at what I feel is like a big disconnect between why people hire community managers and what the community manager thinks they're coming in to do. Another lens on this question from a consumer perspective is, does your role have to drive user growth or show some sense of like virality or like audience growth or something like that, like user acquisition essentially? And I am very, very strongly against that belief. Like, community is not user acquisition, and I think community is a long game, and I think that that's often a really misunderstood point about this entire industry.
Yeah, that was an awesome point to wrap up our discussion. This has been such a great talk. Thank you to Brew, Dom, and Sherry. You guys are awesome, and thank you to everybody on the panel. Thanks for your time. Have a wonderful Community Manager Appreciation Day, and we will see you next year. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, guys. Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody. For everybody still tuning in, we have a couple more hours left. So you can head on over to cmad.co, click on the broadcast schedule, and next coming up here is your organization ready for community, how to assess and stress test? And that's kind of fun to say. So, all right, guys, happy Community Manager Appreciation Day, and hope to see you guys online. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.